My name is Sue Sherman. I am the Executive Director and CEO of the Lamb Foundation. We are a rare disease patient advocacy organization based in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I will be joined shortly by my colleague and co-presenter, Andrea Slattery. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and participate in this extraordinary exchange. It's been riveting from the patient perspective and the patient advocacy perspective, and a special shout out to Corey and David for their passionate and eloquent fireside chat prior to this presentation. As Andrea and I were preparing for today and working to conclude this important discussion, we wanted to reflect with you about why all of this matters, but I think that came out very clearly throughout the afternoon about the power of patients for accelerating scientific and clinical discovery so that we might one day have a future without untreatable diseases. I have been struck all afternoon by how the conversation today is very much what we experience each and every day with our patients, clinicians, researchers, and all of the comments that we've talked about. It's actually been reaffirming to realize how much we have achieved, even despite our flawed system. And one cannot help but wonder how much more can we get done and how much faster can we get it done if we actually solve these issues of data sharing. But very briefly, I'll give you some context and then we'll welcome Andrea. Lymphangioliomyomatosis, that's LAM. It is a rare lung disease that almost exclusively affects women in the prime of their lives. The average age of diagnosis is 35 years. This disease is characterized by an abnormal growth of smooth muscle cells that especially proliferate in the lung. It's extremely rare, 3 to 7 cases per million people. It's a progressive disease, and ultimately women will progress to needing oxygen or transplant potentially. Our mission, like that of most patient advocacy organizations, is all about the patient. We urgently seek safe and effective treatments and ultimately a cure for LAM. And we do this through advocacy and the funding of research. As with everything talked about today, it's about bringing together the scientific, medical, and patient communities by offering information, resources, and pushing things forward. So this slide lists the accomplishments of the foundation, but I would argue that this is actually the accomplishments of the LAM patient community. This has taken 25 years, actually 26, and this is what can happen when patients organize and put their best interests first. Even again, in this flawed world that was presented this afternoon, this is what in 25 years has been achieved. We have an FDA-approved treatment for LAM, approved in 2015, called sirolimus. It is now approved in 20 countries globally. We have published treatment guidelines. We have a blood-based biomarker that reduces the need for surgical biopsy. We have a database of more than 3,000 patients at our US Foundation, and we have 19 sister organizations around the world with another 6,500 patients identified. We have assembled a global network of LAM clinical centers and research centers, and they are a place where patients can go to get informed care, which is not easy with rare disease communities. We have raised nearly $29 million, 90% of that from patients and families. 17 million of that has been dedicated to research, and we estimate that that small investment relatively has been leveraged to another $50 million worth of research into this small disease. We have made additional investments in education, patient support, and awareness activities. And we've been recognized as a model to emulate by the New England Journal of Medicine and the NIH. So again, it's extraordinary that when patients are, how motivated patients are to change their own futures. So one asks, how does a group get this done? And I made this slide, which is a list of the clinical trials over the last 20 years dedicated to LAM research. One might also argue that it's an exercise in acronyms, but it's a long list for, again, an organization where there was really no research just 26 years ago. And the asterisks show where the LAM LAM patients have helped fund research through the LAM Foundation. And the points I wanted to make here were really reflected almost all afternoon, is that while we have made remarkable progress and data from these trials is available in some cases, not always accessible, for the most part, samples and data live in silos. And we would like to propose that if all of this data were available, how much faster progress might have been made and how many more discoveries and the what ifs of preserving life, of preserving families, and improved function and wellness if we were able to get to these answers faster. And then moving from this success, if we think about looking ahead and the power that patients could bring to this entire equation, the commitment from our patients would be yes to consent. It's come up today, streamlined consent. They're willing, they want to share their data, as David mentioned in our last talk. They're energized to reduce the complexity. When we think about the quality of this data and what's possible with new technologies, patient-reported outcomes, quality of life measures, and input to trial design from the patient perspective is something that we think about all the time. And how this can be integrated into clinical data and result in new questions to be asked from the patient perspective, and really have a better assessment of the individual experience with this disease. We know that the technology is out there to enhance the data. Recently, with the pandemic, the power of telemedicine has only amplified. And what we're seeing now is that we're able to use home-based data metrics and remote access to power clinical trials. And this could mean breaking down borders. This could mean more diversity and inclusion. And as for example, we have an ongoing clinical trial right now where since the time of the pandemic, we've been able to enroll patients from overseas who supplied all of their data electronically through home spirometry. And finally, the last bullet here is really to echo that the technology exists in the time of social media, in the time of digital journaling, and the ways that patients want to actively engage with researchers, with clinical trials, that the ease of entering data through apps, the possibility of this data integration for patient-reported outcomes and clinical or quality measures and clinical metrics is really we think it can be unleashed. So I think that patients are ready to continue their part and are looking to this group of people to bring it together and move things forward much faster. It is now my pleasure to welcome to this presentation my colleague and friend and my inspiration. Andrea Slattery and I have known each other for 8 years, and in that time, she has taught me that no is a word that others may choose to use. But when it comes to advocating for patients with LAM, when it comes to raising money or reaching out for the next accomplishment, the word no is just somebody else's opinion. Andrea is a partner at Symmetry Peak Management, a technology investment firm. She is a CFA charter holder, one of the most respected designations in the field of investment analysis. She is a wife, a mother, and a philanthropist. Importantly for today, she has LAM and has a perspective that reframes everything we've heard today. So please welcome Andrea Slattery.
Thank you, Sue. And thank you to everyone here for inviting me to share my patient experience here with you today. It has been a fascinating discussion, and I can tell you from a patient perspective, extremely encouraging. I was diagnosed 14 years ago when I was 4 months pregnant. I had a busy, successful career. I was newly married, and I had plans for starting and growing my family. So literally everything was ahead of me. But the world as I knew it completely changed with one word: lymphangioliomyomatosis. At that moment of diagnosis, oftentimes a patient is willing to do anything and everything that will help research progress. I joined the board of the LAM Foundation, and shortly thereafter, I was elected board chair. I believed so much in the Lamb Foundation because of the strong collaboration between scientists, clinicians, and patients, but also because of their willingness to share data and collaborate between the NIH, Lamb scientists, patients, and clinical research centers. This collaboration resulted in the Lamb Foundation finding an FDA-approved treatment for Lamb, something only 5% of rare diseases have accomplished. These are just some of the things that I was willing to do to make sure that I provided the best possible future for my family. But the pace of progress confounded me. As someone who works in the technology industry, I have an intimate appreciation for the exponential growth of systems, processing speeds, data generation, and knowledge aggregation. Yet, in a speech by Chris Austin, then director of the National Center for Accelerating Translational Sciences, also known as NCATS at the NIH, he said that at our current pace, if we do nothing differently, it will take 2,000 years to find treatments for all rare diseases. 2,000 years. In the life of someone with Lamb, each day we lose lung function at a rate of 3 to 4 times someone without Lamb. Every few months, we adjust to a new normal of less energy, more breathlessness, and shortened exercise routines. And each year, families must forego or choose between the joy of having children with the prospect of leaving them potentially motherless. In fact, just this month, a 29-year-old Lamb patient and mother-to-be delivered her daughter at 28 weeks, but lost her life in the process, leaving a husband, daughter, and loved ones devastated. In this example, which is illustrative of far too many patients, the cost of time literally equals life lost and impossible choices. You heard from Sue how we as patients are doing our part. I'm willing to consent and have my data shared. In fact, I want to do more. Streamlined apps for data entry, integration of clinical records, creation of a personal health dashboard. These types of tools, which are hardly revolutionary, would empower patients to make data sharing even more compelling. When you have a disease, you need research to move as quickly as possible because it has real-life implications for life choices and many times life expectancy. And I get it, this is hard. As we've heard today, there are so many complexities between academia, government, corporations with respect to patient privacy and data. And all of these regulations exist for good reason, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And we can't let what's difficult prevent us from finding an enabling solution. Possibly with the advancements in technology, it may be possible to both comply with regulations and also share data in ways that simply weren't possible just 10 to 15 years ago. We must commit to sharing this data to accelerate progress. Put simply, collaboration equals better results. Patients need the FDA, the NIH, and data companies to share the data to accelerate research progress. Because by working together and pushing down the barriers to share data, we can save lives. Thank you so much for having me here today. And Sue, now I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate your comments. And with this, I'd like to also thank all of our attendees and who joined us throughout the day today. We're going to turn it over now to a message from Holly Smith at the DataSphere Project.
Thank you, Sue. It's such an honor to have you and Andrea close out today's session. You really hit home why we're all here at the end of the day. On behalf of CEO Roundtable on Cancer and Project DataSphere, I'd like to thank all of our speakers and participants in today's events, especially our partners at the FDA. A special thanks goes out to everyone involved in our planning committee. I hope we can collectively keep this high level of energy and engagement around the topic of data sharing and reuse, that we stay committed to making this new future of clinical trial data sharing a reality. Thanks so much.